This meeting is being recorded.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming to my astrocartography class. I've never gotten to teach a class on this before, but I've spent a lot of time delving into this discipline in my own life, and the extent to which it has added quality and value to my life is immense. I actually just used this modality to make a decision to move back to the San Francisco Bay Area, which was a big choice for me. I've lived there before. I also used it in my last move in making a choice to move down to Sedona, Arizona. Astrocartography is basically taking our astrological birth chart, which we all know we have our own astrological birth chart, right? That's based on our time of birth, our date of birth, our place of birth, the exact minute that we were born, which makes us so unique to anybody else. And so what we're doing in astrocartography is actually superimposing that 2D chart that you've seen so many times on your phone and your computer and your astrology readings, right? And we're gonna superimpose that 2D chart onto the 3D map of the Earth. And so what you get when we do this, which has only in recent years become available to us, this was actually kind of created in the 1970s by a man named Jim Lewis. And as we've gotten computers and gotten phones, we've had more of an ability to use this modality than ever before, whereas astrology is thousands of years old, right? And it's actually believed that the three wise men used the observations of the stars to find the location of Jesus's birth. So this is an ancient modality, but our ability to actually superimpose our 2D charts onto the 3D map of the world allows us easier access to this modality now that we have technology. And so what we're basically looking at is what planets were setting and rising at the time of our birth. And so the same way that your ascendant, if y'all know about your rising sign, your ascendant is based on what was rising on the Earth's horizon when you were born. And so we're basically looking at that for each of the different planets in astrocartography. So today what we're going to talk about is what each of the planets means for you. Each of the planets is making certain lines across a map for your birth chart. And I will tell you how you can look up your birth chart and then what each of the planetary lines is really all about. I'll also be giving you examples from my life and my chart, so you can see kind of how it would work for you as well. And also what will be helpful for you is knowing what your aspects are on your astrological chart, right? Because we all have different aspects. I'm not just a Sagittarius, I'm also a Libra rising, and I'm also an Aries moon. But when I was born, the sun and Mars were also opposite each other. So that's really important in who I am. It makes me very competitive, very defensive, which aren't always the best things, but it also makes me really excitable and passionate. It's a very important thing about me. And so for instance, with my sun illuminating my Mars in such a particular way, that makes me a very Martian being. I really like being in the Mars energy because the sun is illuminating that for me. So while some people who don't have as much Mars in their chart, who aren't as ruled by Mars as a planetary ruler, some people might not like to live on their Mars line because their Mars line would bring up for them a lot of anger and competition. Whereas I, being a pretty Martian, excitable, passionate being, I actually like to live on my Mars line. And that's why I am choosing to move back there in the Bay Area. So I'll give you some examples as we move forward, but I'm gonna start with talking about each of the planets and what those bring up for us. And if you have a pretty basic knowledge of each of the planets, this will make a lot of sense for you. But we'll basically apply that to what it would be like to live within those energies rather than just experiencing them in a cosmic fashion. Julia, if you wouldn't mind muting your microphone, there's just a little feedback. Thank you so much. So, in case anybody wants to do this in real time, if you type in AstroCartography on Google, you can find a few different ways to do this, where you'll type in your date, your time, and your place of birth, and it will bring up your AstroCartography map for you. So if anybody wants to do this real time and like look at your planets, I will drop in the chat the website that I like to use best for it, which is horoscopes.astro-seek.com. That is my favorite website to use for this. I think that it's the most user-friendly. And again, you'll just type in all of the details of your birth, and you'll be able to look at your specific astrocartography map. So one thing that I want to say before I get started on the planets is that this astrocartography is really this discipline that helps you to define what you want out of life. If you want to live a more relaxed, observant, perceptive, receptive life of love and beauty, obviously you want to live on your Venus line. Venus is really relaxed. It's all about aesthetics and love and beauty. And I mean, who doesn't want that? But that might not be the most sensible course of action for everybody. People who are much more logical and sensible and like structure and boundaries and responsibilities and to be grounded and earthy might like to live more on their Saturn line. Those kind of people definitely don't want to live near their Neptune line, which is much more dreamy and inspirational. So keep in mind as we go through what each of the planetary lines are going to bring up within you, that, you know, what you want to go for in your life. Because astrocartography is really helping you to see, you know, it's where astrology might help you see, you know, who is most compatible with you and when you might start a certain job. You know, this is a scientific discipline that's taking geography and astronomy as well as the more pseudoscience-y astrology, and allowing you to see on a large basis, on a locational basis, where would be the most relaxing for me? Where would be the best for my career in communications? Where's the best place for me to live, to love, to work, to play? And so combining those with information that you know about yourself, that's really what a big part of astrocartography is all about. What do you want out of life? So keep that in mind as we move forward. Okay, so we're going to start with the sun and the moon, and then we'll move through the planets from closest to the sun to farthest from the sun. So many of us know the sun in astrology represents ourself, our identity, our ego, how we see ourselves, where we feel comfortable, where we feel in sync. And so when we live or vacation on or near our sun line, we're going to feel a lot of self-acceptance. We're going to feel really at flow, in sync with who we are. We're going to feel really comfortable near our sun line. We're going to feel really familiar with places near our sun line. It's just somewhere where the parts of ourselves that we're most familiar with are illuminated. And so living, working, playing on or around your sun line is going to be great for you, pretty much no matter what. Another thing I want to bring up here though is that the aspects of your astrological chart also affect this. So how I said that my sun is in opposition to my Mars, if I'm on my sun line, that opposition to Mars aspect is going to exist there. Because my sun is really affected by Mars in my birth chart, if I'm near my sun line, it's going to be affecting my Mars as well. Mars is going to be affecting me. Whereas, for instance, if you have your sun making a trine with Jupiter, a trine is a 120-degree angle on or about. And a trine energy is an aspect that is really good. If two planets are in trine with one another, making a kind of triangle, they love each other. Their planetary energies flow really easily between each other. And Jupiter is this planet of abundance and luck and growth. So if your sun is in trine with your Jupiter, first of all, lucky you. Everybody wants that. And second of all, whereas my sun, me being on my sun line, would bring up a lot of Martian stuff for me, you being on your sun line would bring up a lot of luck and abundance and opportunity. So just keep that in mind, that whatever line you're close to is also going to be really affected by the aspects that you have in your chart. And pretty much my favorite app for astrology on my phone is called Time Passages. I think I probably paid $4 for it, and I pay like $1 if I want to add another person's chart to it. But when you get an astrology app that's pretty voluminous, that has a lot of depth to it, not just one that's like the horoscope for Sag every day, but one that tells you in depth about your chart, which there are surely dozens of them that would suffice. Each of these, you're going to be able to look at your birth chart, see the angles, but it's often hard to decipher in that way. Even I, as a mathematician who loves patterns and angles and stuff like that, still the birth chart is a little difficult when looking at it. And so, you know, you can usually click the list form of that and it'll tell you your sun is in trine with your Jupiter. Your Venus is in conjunction with your Mars, and it'll give you a list of each of those aspects. And usually you have like anywhere from 20 to 30 different aspects. And so another thing these apps generally do, or you can do it on a website on your computer as well, is list the aspects in the most important to the least important order. And actually what determines how important one of those aspects is how close to perfect that angle is. Because think about the 360 degrees of a circle. If something is actually 180.0 degrees from something else, that's going to be your strongest aspect. But if something's like 177.7 degrees away from each other, that's still pretty close to opposition, but it won't be your strongest aspect because you probably have another that's mathematically closer. I hope that wasn't too mathematically intense for anybody to understand, but basically the closer that you get to perfection of an angle, think geometry, the more important that aspect is going to be for you. And so that's just a really illuminating and important part of astrology, and what makes us all the more unique is looking at those aspects of ourselves. And that really sheds a lot of light on our AstroCartography too. If you're really looking to use this discipline to help you decide where to move, or to help you decide where to vacation, or to help you decide what international country you want to do business in or with, this is a really important lesson to remember about this. So moving on from the sun, the moon is a really feminine aspect, right? And actually we're on the new moon today. We're on the new moon in Cancer. The moon is really feminine. The moon is about our emotions. It's about our subconscious and our introversion. And so when we live or work or experience life near our moon line, we're going to feel a lot more sensitivity. We're going to feel a lot more vulnerability. We're going to feel a lot more femininity and kind of stillness and introversion in our life. Whereas the sun is much more masculine. It's very extroverted. The moon is going to encourage you to live a life of more stillness and femininity. And so people who are more extroverted and outward might feel more comfortable on a sun line than on a moon line. If you're a Leo, You're gonna like being on your sun line. If you're a Cancer, you're gonna feel more comfortable being on your moon line. Does that make sense? And especially if your rising is Leo, not even your sun, you're still going to identify with that sun line because your sun is one of your most important planetary rulers. So that's also something to take into account as we move forward. What are your sun and moon and rising signs, and what are the planetary rulers of those? I, as a Sag, a Libra, and an Aries, have a lot of Jupiter, Venus, and Mars, respectively, in my chart. And so I feel really comfortable near Jupiter, Mars, and Venus lines. So that's something to take into account as well. Also, for instance, I have a bunch of Capricorn in my chart. I think my Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, or Saturn, Uranus, Neptune are all in Capricorn. And so that leads to me being a very Saturnian being because Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn. And so that is really important for me. I actually like living on my Saturn line where a lot of people wouldn't. I like being near my Saturn line because I'm a Saturnian being. And if anybody did look up your chart on that website that I gave you or any other website, if you did go to horoscopes.astroseek.com and look up your astrocartography map, one of the things you can do is just click anywhere on that map. And that's going to take you to a chart. And there are different tabs that you can look at on that chart. And if you go to the one that's called the dominance tab is going to give you a really, really informative chart that tells you which planets are the most dominant for you. And so for me, I'm like 22% Jupiter and 25% Saturn versus like 15% Mars and Venus or something like that. So you can see what planetary rulers are the most important for you. So moving on through the planets, next we have Mercury. And Mercury is this planet of communication. Mercury is the closest planet to the sun. It's revolving around the sun more often than any other planet, which makes a lot of sense with why Mercury is the planet of communication, because communication is something that we're doing all the time. We're doing it all day, every day. And when you look at what the planets mean conceptually, this is something that's always struck me as really cool about astrology. As the planets get further from the sun, their influences are kind of less and less often. So maybe I'll draw upon that as we move forward. But Mercury is the closest to the sun, and it's all about our communication, and it's also about our technical skills. So if we are somewhere near our Mercury line, this is going to be a place where we're having a lot of conversation. We're having a lot of downloads and ideas. They say if you're having a creative block, go near your Mercury line because it's going to bring up a lot of creativity. It's going to stimulate a lot of conversation and ideas. And it's also going to be a place where your technical skills are brought into the forefront. Especially if you work in any kind of communications field, where you're doing any sales or any promotions or any acting or any writing, being by your Mercury line, or even just going to vacation by your Mercury line for a week or two, if you are experiencing a writer's block, going in on around your Mercury line is going to be really helpful. One thing that you'll notice if you do look at your astrocartography map online, most of the websites for it are really great where you can just go click on Seattle and it'll tell you what aspect is the most important for you there. It'll be like, oh, Seattle's on your Jupiter line. So that would be really great for you, And so you can kind of just click around on a map, which is really fun. That was how I first experienced astrocartography. I was like, where do I want to go in the world? Oh, look at all these places in Europe that have my Jupiter line. Oh, looks like I don't want to go to Japan because I got a big Mars-Saturn conjunction over there. You can just kind of click around, especially if you're a traveler. I'm a Sagittarius, so I just want to travel the whole world. But it's really great to see what places would be best for you and best for your work and best for your love life as well. speaking of love life, the next planet on the list for us to talk about is Venus. And Venus is the planet of love and beauty. And we kind of covered this a little bit earlier, but Venus is this planet of receptivity and perception and observing and listening and bringing energy in towards us. Venus and Mars are kind of this sister and brother, where Mars is about action and giving and putting energy out. Venus is about receiving and observing and bringing energy in towards us. So, personal anecdote, I had a rather traumatizing end of 2020 and beginning of 2021. And March, April of this year, I was out for the count, y'all. I was like, I need some healing. Please take me somewhere where I can relax and heal. I'm about to cry thinking about it. Like, it was intense. I needed to heal. And I decided to move down to Sedona, and I looked at my astrocartography. I was like, perfect. It's on my Venus line. And I knew Sedona would be good for me because it is such a, supernatural, like extraterrestrial, like place that's good for card readers and all beings that are looking to go on spiritual paths. So I knew I wanted to go for that reason as well, but also because it was on my Venus line, I was like, perfect. I don't really have to do very much. I can just sit back. I can receive. I can listen. I can learn. I can just observe what's around me without having to put out too much. And I'm getting chills right now, y'all, because that is what I did. I actually just moved away from Sedona, but I spent about 6 weeks there. And I thought I would be there for a few years, but it turns out that 6 weeks on my Venus line was all the healing that I needed. Venus, my 6 weeks there were probably the most introverted I've ever been, maybe since I was like 7 and spent all my time reading books by myself. But I've never really been as introverted as I have in the past 6 weeks in Sedona, because I was able to just receive and listen so much to the universe and to the signals that were being given to me from source, from God, from my angels, from my guides, from my spirits. It was just this time where I was receiving so much love, so much information, so many ideas and epiphanies and medicine and healings from myself and from outside of myself. It was incredible. And I'm not a super Venusian being. I think it's maybe like 10% of my chart. And especially because I've always lived on my Uranus line or my Mars line, which are much more, Uranus is very eccentric and rebellious and unexpected and full of change. And Mars is very competitive and intense and passionate. For me, living on my Venus line was like, I had never done this before. And so it can be interesting for you to look at your chart and look at where you've lived for most of your life. And if you've lived on your sun for forever and you're a little tired of it, maybe go move somewhere where you're going to be on your moon, near your moon, or vice versa, or even to just vacation or take a little sabbatical to somewhere where, if you've been on your Venus for your whole life and you've been kind of introverted, maybe if you go somewhere where you're on your Mars line, you will be extroverted. You will surprise yourself. The energies of the cosmos are so strong. They're so much bigger than us. And so it's really interesting to see the effects that these places have on us. We think we know what will happen. Like, I knew that Sedona would be good as this Venusian energy, but it was like way more profound than I could have expected, if that gives you an idea of why I wanted to teach this class on astrocartography. I was like, I've got to tell people about this because it's profound. So next, we've talked a little bit about Mars. Mars is about action and our passion, but Mars is also the god of war. So there's a lot of fiery anger and competition. So a lot of people, if you're trying to avoid your anger issues, you don't want to go live on your Mars line. I am trying to face my anger issues head on So I'm going back to live on my Mars line. But Mars is a place that really, it kind of lights a fire under our ass, excuse my language. It catalyzes us, it impassions us, it galvanizes us, which is a word I learned this year. Galvanize means like light a fire under your ass. Mars really galvanizes us to be our most authentic self, to allow our creativity to soar, to allow our passion to explode, if you will. So Mars is a great line to go be on if you are feeling the need to like let some of your passion out. Let's see, was there anything else? It's also a very masculine energy. It's very intense. If you're not looking for masculinity and intensity, Mars is probably not where you want to be. So next is Jupiter, and Jupiter is the biggest planet in our sky. It is the planet, thus, of expansion, of growth, of abundance, of opportunity. Jupiter is another name for Zeus, and Zeus is the king of the gods, the god of gods. Jupiter is the most blessed of all the planets, and it's here to bring you blessings and opportunity and growth and abundance. It's basically great for anybody to be near your Jupiter line, unless you have a weird aspect, right? Where if your moon is in a square with your Jupiter and somehow you have hardship with receiving luck and abundance, a square is a 90-degree angle or somewhere around it. And moon, right, is very sensitive and vulnerable. And so if you have a moon square Jupiter, you might have trouble and be really sensitive when it comes to receiving abundance, and it might not work so well for you. But unless you have one of these like limiting aspects, it's pretty certain that being anywhere near your Jupiter line is going to be great for you and lead to a lot of abundance and opportunity for you in this really lucky and unexpected way. And so that would be a cool exercise. Just go to your AstroCartography chart, your map, and look at all of the places that Jupiter hits. One thing I want to say in that regard is that what percentage of the Earth is actual land versus water? Isn't it like 80% is water? You know, it's something ridiculous like that. So when you're looking at your map, there will be plenty of lines. Jupiter might just go straight through the water and never hit land. Luckily, there are 4 different lines for each planet, and you'll see pretty much on any astrocartography map that you look at, it'll probably be labeled. First of all, you're going to have to learn the symbols or have a chart that's showing you the symbols, because it's going to have a Jupiter symbol, which looks like a 2 and a 4 together. But you're going to have to figure that out as you look at the map. But also, it'll either say ascending, descending, probably AS or DS, and or IC or MC. And these are basically north, south, east, west, all of the different ways that the planet is hitting Earth at the time that you were born. It's looking at the planet every direction. So you're actually going to have 4 different Jupiter lines. So probability is that one of them is crossing somewhere, but it might be like Timbuktu, where you're not expecting to ever go. However, if you do make it to Timbuktu, you're probably going to have a lot of abundance coming to you. So take a look at where your Jupiter line is hitting and see if you can ever plan a vacation there, because it's honestly going to be great for you, unless you have one of those limiting aspects, but hopefully you don't. Next we have Saturn, and kind of the way that Venus and Mars have this sister and brother thing where Venus is receiving and Mars is giving. If Saturn is expanding, if Jupiter is expanding, Saturn is contracting. Saturn's kind of like a bitch slap, bringing you back down to earth. Saturn is our boundaries and our responsibilities and our structures. Saturn's actually called the Lord of Karma. And Saturn is here to make sure that everything's all in balance, but like that's not always as fun as the expansion of Jupiter, which is so eye-opening, and Saturn slapping us back down to earth. Some people deal with Saturn more easily than others. Saturn is basically saying, you know, you need to abide by your karma. You need to do these responsibilities. You need to act within these boundaries. And so I, being 25% Saturn, it being my most important planetary ruler because of all the Saturn that I have in my chart, I know that I need to live within certain boundaries, that I need to pay great attention to my karma and to my responsibilities and my duties in this lifetime. And so me living on my Saturn line is gonna make a lot more sense to me personally than somebody who's not willing to look at their karma, who doesn't want to deal with their responsibilities. Saturn kind of forces you to take things seriously. So just be aware if you're going to go anywhere near your Saturn line that your boundaries are going to come up. If you're going to go on vacation near your Saturn line, just be aware that some responsibilities might come up for you that you wouldn't have expected or wouldn't have hoped for when you were just trying to lay on the beach in Aruba, you know? So next we have Uranus, and Uranus is this planet of cosmic consciousness. It kind of sets us free from the boundaries of Saturn, but it does so in this really unexpected, erratic, unusual, rebellious way. We're actually at a time in today and over the past week or so, and maybe moving forward a few days, where Saturn and Uranus are at a square with each other in the sky. And I bring that up because I call Saturn the rule maker and Uranus the rule breaker. And like I said earlier, a square is like kind of a difficult aspect. So when we have the rule breaker at a head with the rule maker, you know, there's some crazy stuff going on. And so that's probably bringing up within you, do I want to abide or do I want to rebel? Uranus is asking you to rebel, is telling you to rebel, is giving you lots of unexpected and unusual and erratic happenings that make you want to rebel. I actually grew up on my Uranus line. However, my household, my parenting is very Saturnian. My mom is a Capricorn moon and a Capricorn rising. And so she's a very Saturnian being. So she was raising me like, follow the rules, live within the boundaries. However, I'm growing up on my Uranus line, which is like, rebel, don't follow the rules. So of course I had this like really interesting dichotomy. Wish I had known that when I was growing up, because I left pretty early on because it was such an intensity that, you know, now I understand, but I did not then. That I was just living on this Uranus line that was trying to get me to rebel against the Saturnian nature of my home. So next we have Neptune. We're almost done here, y'all. Neptune is this dreamy, mystical planet. When you think of Neptune, he's the king with the guy with the trident, the ruler of the ocean. So Neptune is all about travel and adventure, and especially travel overseas. It's really watery, it's really dreamy, it's really mystical. And so if you're a spiritual being, going near your Neptune line is like, yes. If you're a very logical being, you probably don't want to be anywhere near your Neptune line. But you got to remember, no matter where you are on the scale, that Neptune is also very delusional and full of illusion. And while it's kind of brings up our muses, if you go to your Neptune line, you're going to be really inspired, but it also might be a little like a mirage, like a delusion. Like you think you're inspired, but there's some element of surprise there, of delusion there. And so just be aware when you're on your Neptune line that things might not quite be as they seem. And moving on to Pluto. Pluto is not even considered a planet anymore, but make Pluto a planet. Pluto is this entity of spiritual rebirth and transformation, and of the big changes that happen in our life. that allow us to be reborn, that allow us to be revolutionized and transformed. So if you go towards your Pluto line, if you're living near your Pluto line, and by the way, like, since these are lines that are crossing maps, you don't have to live on your Pluto line. Anywhere, you know, within a 200-mile radius probably of your Pluto line is gonna affect you in Plutonian ways. The closer that you get to that line, the more intense it will be. But especially if you're living out here and there's no other line crossing anywhere near you other than Pluto, Pluto's going to be the most important planet for you, even if you're living in the middle of nowhere. So Pluto being such a planet of spiritual transformation, if you're near your Pluto line, expect to be transformed, expect to be revolutionized, expect to undergo a certain kind of rebirth. If you're ready for that, if you're craving that, if you want to be reborn, go near your Pluto line. If you need to make a big shift, you need to go through a phoenix death and rebirth in your life, by all means, seek out your Pluto line. If you don't want to do that and you are scared of that and you don't need that in this lifetime, or at least not right now in this lifetime, you're busy, you just had a baby, it's not time for that or something, that's a rebirth of its own, maybe don't seek out your Pluto line quite yet, okay? Next we have Chiron. One last thing other than a planet. Chiron is a comet, but Chiron is known as the wounded healer. And so it's a really great line with a lot of potential for deep healing for both yourself and for others. It's a great place to go to help you heal yourself and to heal others. And then lastly, I want to tell you that the North and South node, if any of you don't know about those, the South node in your chart is kind of where you came from karmically, ancestrally. I have no Cancer anywhere in my chart except my South node is in Cancer. So it's like, in a past life, I was a Cancer. The world of Cancer is kind of from where I come in this ethereal way, which I feel in some kind of like way I can't describe. And you'll feel that if you start looking at your South node, you'll be like, I do come from there, but I don't know how or why I feel that. It's just inside of me. Whereas your North node is kind of like where you want to go. It's like your fate and your destiny and your future. And you're like, I'm gonna get there, but I don't know how that's gonna happen either. So looking at your South node and your North node lines are also really cool. Your South node is kind of gonna bring up some ancestral stuff for you if you live near that line or go near that line. Your North node line is going to help you to bring your future, your fate, and your destiny into being. Yeah, that is the majority of what I wanted to share with you. You're going to have fun with this discipline by yourself when you go look at your astrocartography map and see where your Jupiter lines are, where your North and South node lines are, where those cross on what continents, and comparing those with like where you want to go. Have you always felt drawn to South America, but you like haven't made it yet and you're not sure why? And then you go look at Bolivia and like your Jupiter and your Venus cross there and you're like, I knew I should go there. You know, if you got a travel bug, this is the modality for you. It has infinite lifelong wisdom for us to draw upon. And the last really thing that I wanted to say in closing about this discipline is that, you know, we don't always have the means to travel. During COVID, we aren't able to go anywhere. You know, we didn't used to have planes. People couldn't just go anywhere. And so we don't always have the funds to go places, or we might have responsibilities that keep us from traveling. And so there is still a way to draw upon these energies without actually doing the travel. And that is, you know, say that you have some really great lines going through France, but you just don't know if you're ever going to make it to France. Read French literature, listen to French music, watch French movies, eat French cuisine. Find ways that you can appreciate that culture without having to go be there physically. Then maybe you'll fall in love with it by doing that and you'll find a way to make it happen, you know? But we can experience these cultures and the places where certain astrological aspects would be really beneficial for us, or lack thereof, through experiencing the art, the music, the literature, the cultures, the food, of these places, the music of them especially. And another way is, buying products from those businesses, like supporting those localities, which you can also do online. Buying something from a place that is on your Jupiter line, maybe that thing will bring you a lot more luck than if you bought that thing from somewhere on your Saturn line. And lastly, if you can make friends or lovers that are if someone's from somewhere that is on your sun line, you're gonna feel really comfortable with them. If they were born on your Venus line, you're probably going to love them and receive a lot of love through them. And so that's a really cool thing too. Look at your friends and your lovers, where they were born, where they've existed for much of their life, and see, how that applies to you based on your astrological map. So, this has been such a wonderful time for me. I hope that you've gotten some juicy tidbits from this and that you're just so excited to go look at your own astrological map. Remember to look at your astrological chart too and compare those aspects with what you see on your astrological map, because maybe everything is not what it seems. Maybe your Saturn line isn't that bad because you got some really great aspects with it in your astrological chart. I know there's a lot of critical thinking involved here, and there's a lot of different pieces to look at, but that just means that there's unlimited ways for you to learn from this discipline. And I hope that it is something that can enhance and enrich your life as much as it has mine. Thank you so much for coming. Sending you so much love and blessings on your journey, wherever you might happen to go. I would love to answer any questions if anybody has any. And if not, I will see you tomorrow for a class I'm giving on the life cards, my life and blood. Alrighty, if nobody has any questions, oh, thank you so much. Thanks, Aggie. And I will see you all at Julia Muse's Creative Catalyst ritual happening in 20 minutes. Julia, thank you for joining. And I'm so excited for your ritual, sweet one. See you all soon. Thank you so much. Mahalo.